Sweating all day with a pickaxe, sweating all night with my hose. My lords now, they love a peasant, 'cause I'm working hard to till the land. And maidens, they love a peasant, 'cause they know I'm a good with my hands. Now peasants come in all shapes and colors, and a lot got arrested in the past, 'cause the sheriff and his posse be profiling, 'cause we of the lowest social caste. So all I got to say to you, flea-bitten, plague-ridden serf, so blindly acquiescent, when an angry mob is forming, what the fuck wilt thou do? Damn, it feels good to be a peasant.
Welcome, thank you for joining us. Who am I? I'm your host, Jeff, the Dissident Peasant. And on today's show, what is this thing? Why am I doing this? This is the inaugural episode of the Dissident Peasant Podcast. Also on today's show, Russian interference in the 2016 election was real. And anyone who says otherwise is wrong. They are wrong about that. And saying so is not fear-mongering. It's not wanting a war with Russia. It's just stating what is true. Also on today's show, our ongoing series in GOP post-modernism. Nothing matters anymore. Everything is meaningless. We just make stuff up and go about our business of screwing you. That's what we do. Also, my personal views on how unresponsive government has led to cynicism and nihilism in today's political climate. As I said at the top, thank you for joining us. My name is Jeff, the Dissident Peasant. This is the Dissident Peasant Podcast. You can visit my website, dissidentpeasant.com. Follow me on Twitter at JeffHisDudeness. You can visit me on Facebook at the Dissident Peasant Facebook page. Who am I? Well, I just told you. I told you who I was, right? I'm Jeff. Jeff the Dissident Peasant. You can call me the Dissident Peasant. But Jeff's fine, too. But why am I doing this? Right? There's lots of content out there for you to listen to. Lots of political talk. Lots of smart people with fat bank accounts. Why not just listen to them? And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why you should listen to me instead of them. Because they're bad at their jobs. Chris D'Elia is bad at his job. Matthew Dowd is bad at his job. David Brooks is bad at his job. Thomas Friedman is bad at his job. These people are bad at their jobs. They have no business being op-ed columnists for large newspapers with huge platforms. They have no business being on television spouting their nonsense. And they have no business getting paid millions of dollars a year to call things even. No matter what it is, no matter what the Republicans do, both sides are really the problem. And I'm sick of that. I am sick and tired of that. I think a lot of other people are sick and tired of that. But why now? Right? The media climate for the left hasn't been good for decades. And we'll talk more about that later, I'm sure. Lots, because I have lots of strong opinions on that. But it's not new. And I didn't start a podcast then. So why am I doing it now? Well, I don't mean to be overly dramatic, but you may have noticed, if you've been following the news lately, that American democracy is under severe threat. I don't just mean my preferred policies aren't being implemented, although they aren't. And that's, hurting a lot of people. But that's been the case for a while. What's changed now is that the GOP is basically done pretending. right? They're done pretending that they care about the popular will. They're done pretending that they care about the rule of law. They're done. They have the power now. That means they're ruling, not governing. And it's time for them to get their tax cuts. They'll ignore anything and everything in order to deliver more money into the hands of people who already have far too much. And that really would be bad enough, right? Because they're going to get that money from people who don't have enough money already, right? They're going to cut medical care, they're going to cut food stamps, they're going to cut anything and everything that helps the poor, the middle class, and take that money and put it in their own pockets in the form of tax rebates and reduced rates and cuts to investment income and all the rest. It's disgusting and it's awful. But even piled on top of that is the fact that, a criminal enterprise has basically taken over the office of presidency of the United States, right? Like, these people are openly enriching themselves at the public expense, holding events at his... what kind of guy has a re-election campaign for 4 years from now when he hasn't even bothered to staff his entire administration? The kind of guy who does that is interested in the money that he's raking in at that event and isn't actually interested in the job that he's running for. And what's more is this Russia stuff is real, guys. It is real. It happened. A lot of different things happened. So you may wonder what I mean by this Russia thing, but my central thesis is the Russians obviously attempted to interfere in the election, both by probing our physical machines and the systems that support them, and by supporting Donald Trump. Fake news was originally actually like fake news articles propagated by networks of Russian bots on social media, right? That's a real thing that happened. Everybody forgets that was what originally was fake news. But the point is, the Russians preferred Trump, and that's what they got. And now we know for sure that even if they didn't cooperate with the Russians, they certainly wanted to, real bad. At least Donald Trump Jr. did, and the other people in that meeting, that nothing burger of a meeting has ballooned to 8. That's ridiculous. And that brings me to the second story I wanted to talk about: Russian interference in the U.S. election. And stating that was a fact isn't fear-mongering. It was real, and it was multifaceted, and we should talk about it. People should talk about it. I'm not saying that Hillary Clinton's campaign didn't make a ton of mistakes, and I was screaming at my television the entire time, because, like Sam Cedar said of the Majority Report, which that show I love, and he's part of the inspiration that I'm doing this. But in any case, his point was always that she should not be running as the resume candidate. If she makes this candidacy about herself and her own personal qualifications, Trump will love that. He will use that, and it could be a problem. And it turned out to be just enough of a problem that, she barely lost the Electoral College without, of course, forgetting that 3 million more people voted for her than voted for Donald Trump. That's never, it's never okay. It's always okay to remind people of that. It's always okay to remind people of that, because it's an important point. People didn't vote for this. People don't want this. But Russian interference in the election was real. How do I know this? Well, I guess I don't know it, right? I don't know it like I know the sun will rise tomorrow. I don't know it like I will be alive in the next 2 minutes. But I'm relatively certain. Let's just say I would be willing to bet a large amount of money on it. You have to look at the just astonishing series of coincidences that occurred. Did Trump's entire inner circle all just forgot to record on their disclosure forms all the Russians that they met with? It just happened to be an oversight. Does anyone really believe that? I mean, we know Paul Manafort was in with them. We know Carter Page was in with them. We know Michael Flynn was in with them. We know that the Trumps had financial ties there because they accidentally admitted it several times before the election on tape that they fund their golf courses and hotels and that they don't have to worry about U.S. banks because that's where they're getting the money. And yeah, it's pretty obvious based on a preponderance of the evidence, as a lawyer might say, that Russia wanted Trump to win. They did what they could to make that happen. I would suspect that they're probably surprised at the level of success that they achieved, but nonetheless, it is what they wanted. I think they probably thought that it was going to weaken Clinton in a victory more than it was actually going to get Donald Trump elected, but it turned out that Clinton was so weak that they knocked the clay feet out from under her, so to speak. Maybe that's a bad metaphor. I'm not sure. But this stuff is real. It was real, and it happened. And they did attempt to, you see the story today about in North Carolina or South Carolina, I don't remember which, where they, tens of thousands of different intrusions, were attempted. Doesn't mean tens of thousands of people obviously tried to hack, but it means tens of thousands of people or tens of thousands of attempts were made by an entity on the other end. Probably a bot, but obviously somebody has to direct those bots to do so. They were clearly at least probing around the edges of our election system. There are multiple states, and saying so doesn't mean I want a war with Russia. It doesn't mean I want really anything to happen with Russia. But what it does mean is that the GOP is willing to overlook all of this. Can anyone imagine 20 years ago? I was much younger then, obviously. I was just a boy, but I remember fear-mongering about Russia and the Soviets. I was, I guess, 6 when the Soviet Union dissolved, but, the Russians were certainly not our friends through the 90s and 2000s, as far as I recall, in the popular imagination, especially on the right. Right? Commie scum. Better dead than red. Right? These were things right-wingers said. And so I don't want a war with Russia, but Russian interference in the election was real. And the GOP is doing their best not to care about it, not to investigate it. I saw this article today. I'll pull it up here. I pulled it up. It's from CNN Politics, of course. The relevant line is when they were asked if Donald Trump Jr. will be testifying in front of any committees, his lawyers only said that we are in discussions with the various committees, which I take to mean that they are negotiating exactly what questions they can ask and how he can duck any Democrats, 4 minutes of fame or whatever they give him to question him. They'll do their best not to find out as much as they can about this and not look ridiculous, because it's a distraction from their quest to take healthcare away from kids and disabled people. It's going to distract from their quest to put yet more money into the pockets of people who don't need that money. Anyway, next on the show that I wanted to talk about today is our new debut making an ongoing series in GOP's flirtations with postmodernism. I really love this. I remember when I was in college, it was always right-wingers who would bash on postmodernists. They call the left the postmodernists, right? They don't care about what's true. All they care about is how people feel. And now look at them. It's ridiculous. Mick Mulvaney gave a quote a few days ago where he says, "The days of relying on some nonpartisan congressional budget office to do that work for us," by that work he means the score on the latest GOP wealth care bill, the days of relying on that work for us has probably come and gone. Right? Yeah. No kidding, man. Yeah, the days of accounting and numbers and math, those days are gone, right? We're in an era where we build giant fictitious arcs in the middle of the countryside with millions of dollars in state tax rebates, and all based on a story from a extremely old book written by a bunch of sheep herders in the Middle East thousands of years ago. Right, about a bunch of animals on a boat. Right, and that's the era that we live in. We live in an era where, tens of millions of otherwise normal-looking people who love their children and work hard at their jobs, I'm sure, wanted schools to teach that the Earth's 6,000 years old. Right? And it's not just a few nut jobs. There are tens of millions of people who want that stuff, who believe that stuff, and they all vote for one party. They do. I'll never romanticize the Democrats, but the Democrats at least have, all the sane people, basically, and the other side's nothing but, the evil and the duped. That's my opinion anyway. This is not new, right? Nothing new under the sun. Everybody, I think, is probably familiar with that Karl Rove quote when he was in the George W. Bush administration a few years ago about how reporters are left to judiciously study reality while they act. And each time they act, they make their own reality. And we're all just left to study it judiciously as we might. Doesn't matter. We're just watching, right? They're the real actors. So nothing is new under the sun, but I do feel like things have gotten worse lately. I surely do, with this latest criminal usurpation of the presidency. And this idea that facts don't matter and we can spend what we need to for the rubes. If we can get enough of them to vote for us, suppress the rest through a combination of propaganda and police state type freezing of the electorate or whatever. Yeah, they can hold on to power even though their ideas are opposed by not just a majority of the population but a majority of voters. And it's dangerous for society. You see it bleed into other aspects of culture and science. Climate change denial. Like, oh my God, is postmodernism gonna kill us? Is it gonna end human civilization because these people who happen to have grabbed the levers of power can't accept that we're in extreme danger of massive dislocations of people, massive changes in the amount and type and location of arable land on this planet? They don't care. They need their money, and they want their money, and they'll do whatever it takes to make that happen. And they've duped themselves into thinking that they can just talk their way out of all of it. And that's dangerous. Because it might literally end human civilization. Finally, I wanted to talk about something that I'm seeing mostly on the right, obviously, because that's where I focus, because that's who's ruining this country, but also on the left, and that's how these recent presidential elections have led to a great deal of cynicism and almost nihilism among the way people think and talk about politics. You know, twice in the last 4 elections, or George W. Bush and Donald Trump both lost the popular vote in their first elections and nonetheless became president of the United States. This problem is getting worse, right? It's always been with us with the Electoral College and the Senate and the undemocratic way we proportion representatives to the population. But it's getting worse. It's exacerbating our politicians' already pretty reticent behavior in terms of responding to the electorate's demands. They respond to their donors' demands, not to the demands of people. They get people to vote for them with media and with propaganda and with campaign money. They don't actually need to do what those people want them to do, which is pretty much the whole central conceit of democracy, right? And so on the right, you see people, I don't doubt that there were people who really believed that Donald Trump was actually going to make America great again. But, I live deep in the heart of Trump country, and some of these people, they know he's full of shit, right? They know he's full of shit. They can smell a con man. Just cause they're country bumpkins themselves doesn't mean they're all mouth-breathing morons, and they know he's conning them when he says he's gonna bring back all these jobs, but and make their lives better. But they do know that he's gonna kick the ass of the people that they hate. He's the gays and the blacks and the Mexicans and the Muslims and ISIS. He'll put them down because he's a strong man, right? He's a strong man with no respect for democratic institutions. Trump, that is. And so that's why they voted for him. They know he's full of shit. That's cynicism, right? They don't care. They don't care. They know they think all politicians are full of shit, and so they're just gonna vote for one who's gonna kick the asses of the people that they want kicked. That's their reasoning. I don't know if there are more of those people than there are true believers, but those people are certainly a significant faction of Trump voters. And on the left, you're starting to see the rise of people who don't want to talk about anything but how the Democratic Party sucks. How the Democratic Party is dead. How the Democratic Party is useless. How the Democratic Party is corrupt. How Hillary Clinton's history's greatest monster. And why am I not delivering this podcast with an hour's worth of content on the DNC lawsuit? How dare I? Do I not know that there is no greater challenge and obstacle facing the thriving of the American people than the DNC lawsuit? I'm just another liberal apologist for, the center. I'm not a real progressive. That's all nonsense. That's all nonsense. I don't know if these people are just trying to build brands and distinguish themselves. And I guess I should name names. Jimmy Dore and Jeff Waldorf. I've heard them both say this. I've heard Jeff Waldorf specifically talk, for several minutes in his video about how the Democratic Party is dead, totally dead. There's nothing left. What does that mean? Right, dead. Are we going to build a brand new party, everyone? From the ground up? Right? That's what that means if it's dead. No, we're not going to do that. That's ridiculous. We're not going to become Greens. Okay? If you want to work for a third party at a local level and really do some practical stuff, I hear you on that, and that's cool. That's not what I'm talking about. The idea that we can build a national party from the ground up, in time to make any sort of contribution to the resistance, as for what it is ridiculous. That's not going to happen. The Democratic Party's not dead. I see it. It's there. It ain't doing so great these days, but it would be a lot easier to take it over than to build a new one. So I don't like to hear things about how the Democrats are useless and they're dead. They're not useless, okay? They're not perfect, but they're not useless. They make a lot of mistakes. They play on a playing field that's tilted towards themselves, right? Or I should say towards their opponents, right? It's not fair, okay? The way the Electoral College is set up, the way the Senate is set up, these small states in terms of population are far too influential in our system. There are far too many veto points. It's not all the Democratic fault, okay? I'm not going to say that they've covered themselves in glory consistently, but, look, I think they deserve a break now and then. And the task right now, the immediate task to recovering American democracy isn't to bash the Democratic Party, right? It's to remove the criminal who's occupying office currently. And this idea that I've heard both of them speak about, Jeff Walworth and Jimmy Dore, about how impeaching Trump is dangerous because Pence would be even worse. Get out of here with that, man. Get out of here with that. Am I the only person who gives a shit about the rules anymore? The guy's a violation of the Constitution in numerous ways. He is not a legitimate holder of the office. He must be removed before we can do anything else. And the only way to remove him is either to get him to resign or to impeach him. So come on, let's get that happening. Let's go. Because we can't do anything else until that's done. Your ideas about single-payer healthcare for the nation and rebuilding a new third party, even if you want, that's all fine. Okay, you want to get to that, cool. But first, Donald Trump has to be removed from office. And this kind of cynicism that, both political parties are just the establishment and they're both just corrupt. You hear that it's almost similar to the centrist dribble you hear by David Brooks, people like him, about how and the corrupt duopoly, Chris Cillizza, these both siderist guys with huge bank accounts and huge Twitter followings. They also say both sides needs to shape up all the time, because that's all they can talk about when the Republicans hold all the cards. So if you want to be on their side intellectually and reach the same conclusion that they do, that both sides are just hopelessly corrupt and there's nothing that we can do, so let's all build our brand propositions up on YouTube, get those clicks, and talk about nothing but the DNC lawsuit and how MSNBC is nothing but a corporate shill factory, and why the Democratic Party is dead, and I voted for the candidate with the green energy plan, and I feel pretty proud of myself about that. Fine, you go do your thing, but I really hope that people don't fall for your nonsense, because you're being cynical. Democracy's beautiful, man. It's beautiful, and it can work. I know it's got a lot of flaws, and no one ever sold it based on its efficiency. But it's worth preserving. It is better than the alternatives. There's a reason that we wrote the Constitution, and it wasn't just to preserve white supremacy and slaveholding power. All that's in there. But there's good stuff too. Lots of good stuff. And there's no reason to throw it all out. Okay, that concludes today's show. I want to thank you for joining us. Once again, you can visit my website, dissidentpeasant.com. You can follow me on Facebook, Dissident Peasant. You can also contact me on Twitter, Jeff His Dudeness. Email goes to bigboss@dissidentpeasant.com. Please email me. I love hearing from listeners with any comments, suggestions, concerns that you may have. Stay dissident out there, serfs.
Solidarity forever. workers' blood shall run. There can be no power greater anywhere beneath the sun. Yet what force on earth is weaker than the feeble strength of one? But the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong. It is we who plowed the prairies, built the cities where they trade, dug the mines and built the workshops, endless miles of railroad laid. Now we stand outcast and starving mid the wonders we have made, but the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong. They have taken untold millions that they never toiled to earn, but without our brain and muscle not a single wheel can turn. We can break their haughty power, gain our freedom when we learn that the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong. In our hands is placed a power greater than their hoarded gold, greater than the might of atoms, magnified 1,000-fold. We can bring to birth a new world from the ashes of the old, for